Okay. Hello. Good evening.
Hi.
We'd like to welcome you to White Feather Counsel of Men. Thank you for joining us this evening. And Juan and I, we have this a topic to discuss with you that we think is pretty interesting. And as I was telling Juan once when I came across this particular person, it was kind of refreshing to hear him share his ideas in regard to an initiative that he wants to create, and I basically want to take it national in regard to that. And this is the governor of Utah, a young man by the name of Spencer Cox. And he's the governor of Utah, and he has created this initiative titled "Disagree Better." Disagree better. And the foundation of this initiative is basically pretty much wrapped around the whole concept that we don't have to be so antagonistic, so focused on our particular views on subjects, and just so much hatred and turmoil, and just seem like the news cycles are just filled with just negative stuff, just a bunch of negative things going across the social media channels everywhere. So here this young man comes along and provides us with this kind of take a deep breath. You can look at having your views, but it shouldn't have to turn into a disagreement because your views are not the same as someone else. And so he titled it, as I said, he calls it "Disagree Better." And he used a term that really stood out to me. He talked about compassion, and as a man, that's normally something we don't have within our vocabulary that we use on a frequent basis. So he felt that yes, that this type of initiative has to come with the mixture of ingredients, but one of those main ingredients in that is compassion, and that so I shared it with Warren, and we wanted to unpack that this evening in regard to it, and we have a short video of Governor Cox kind of sharing his concepts of his initiative titled "Disagree Better." So we want you to see that right now. It's coming. It's coming up. The technology, when it works fine. When it doesn't, you just have to kind of roll with it, and we'll have it get it up in a moment. So Juan and I have been talking, sharing about our collective ideas we wanted to share with you today. So Juan, why don't you come in?
Yeah. If are you going to just let us know if it comes up? Otherwise, we may just point to some of the things that he brings up. And there's some positives in what he is sharing. I have a few questionable, sort of devil's advocate viewpoint kinds of things to bring up as well. But I do think the general thought of coming to conversation with a center of kindness about yourself and respect for each other creates a more healthy dialogue and creates the atmosphere where a good conversation can be had.
Right.
And so I think maybe he is about, helping us model some kind of healthy dialogue here. He does mention in the clip that we haven't seen yet a couple of words. He uses the word that we ought to respect each other better or more deeper. He uses several words that actually reminded me of one of the sessions that we had done in the past, and that one was entitled Commonalities.
Yeah.
And in the one on commonalities, I remember us mentioning that some of the things that we bring together, whether a white person or a African American or a person of color or an African American man or a white man, some things that we bring to the table in common is that we always want to be treated with respect. We want to be heard and listened to. And we want to sort of pursue our ideals. And I think he has promoted those within what he says.
Yeah.
But there's some other things that I'll get to later. I think the video is going to be up, and we'll show it now. Thanks.
The person who disagrees with us. Fighting never. Healthy disagreement is about staying true to who we are, to the principles that we believe in, but also not attacking the person who disagrees with us. Fighting never changes anyone's mind. In fact, it makes us more sure of our ways. We listen with respect, and we're always open to learn from other people. We treat people with respect and dignity. So it really is about attacking ideas and not people. This nation was set up with 50 states being laboratories of democracy. This idea that we would compete to try to find solutions and do things better and learn from each other. I found that listening to understand as opposed to listening to debate is a very powerful tool. Because what happens is when we're curious, when we're really trying to understand where the other person is coming from, they're much more likely to give us that same opportunity and to listen to us. I love this country, and I know the people who I disagree with also love this country. Together, we can disagree better.
Good. So we hope that Governor Cox said some things that may have caused you to kind of go to a deep thinking in reference to, was there something that he said that you can relate to or you agree with or you disagree? But in regard to, I found it very refreshing. One, because as a white male and in the type of occupation that he's in as a governor in America, to be speaking about a sense of coming together with a foundation of respect and the ability to listen and to have a decorum about yourself that is not going to turn into a conflict, so to speak. That you can have your views, you don't have to agree, but you can respect another person's position without it turning into a fight, so to speak. So that was just very refreshing. And again, the fact that one of the ingredients that he incorporated in this initiative is compassion. And the one that I was coming over about, that's not something men talk about a lot. When we talk about compassion, exactly how does that look in men's life when we talk about compassion? To care about people, that you have a certain, you transmit a certain aroma about yourself that people don't have to fear you. They don't have to be prepared to that you may attack them in some way, verbally, if not physically, or both. So how you have that type of personality that will make people more welcoming to you and you welcome to them, yeah, that requires a lot of soul searching. So I think Governor Cox is on to something. We can see where it's going to go, but we'll
see how it gets some traction. I will say, the positive nuggets that I've heard. He did say be true to yourself in his comments. He did say fight ideas, not people. So I like that. I like that aspect of how we can disagree. Here's where I'm beginning to feel a little uncomfortable if he is suggesting this. Right. And I don't want to say that he's suggesting it. He didn't use these words. He didn't use the words, let's agree to disagree. But I do wonder if that's where he's going. And if he is saying, let's agree to disagree, I'm going to be uncomfortable hearing that within the context of this racial justice series that we are promoting.
Right.
Because I don't want to hear someone say, let's agree to disagree, and I believe that there's not white oppression out in this world. Let's agree to disagree because I believe that white privilege hasn't put me where I am. That does need to be challenged. We do need to disagree with that. Now, can we disagree compassionately? Maybe that's where he's after.
Right.
So I don't want us to, and he did say, be true to yourself. But I am wondering about that balance point of when someone opposes us to the degree that we deeply feel they are wrong. I mean, racial equality is not seen by everybody now. There is racial discrimination. We have to admit it. So can someone say, well, okay, I just disagree with that, and it's okay to disagree. So I don't want us to just acquiesce to that.
Right.
You know, there's a large chasm with blacks and whites in education in the socioeconomic work world. We've talked about that in other podcasts. In the criminal justice system, there are so many divisive and specific examples of how the white-dominated society has oppressed people of color. So I don't want us to think that he is saying, well, let's just agree to disagree and blah, blah, blah. So that's where I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
You know, America Thomas Jefferson is given credit with this quote, but he said, at some point, America is going to have to pay for its original sin, which basically was talking about slavery. And, you know, when we talk about that subject and, you know, how long should we have to deal with the wrongs that were committed by white men 100, 200, 300 years ago? They're dead and gone, but their legacies of white, particularly white men's privilege, it's all around us.
And the trauma and the fear still exist. The trauma and the pain.
Yes.
So that's what we can't ignore either.
Right. No, you can't. And in reference to how do we separate trauma and pain from shame, it's always a challenge. You know, you can be shameful about a history. You can you can feel that there are certain elements, even in this culture today, up to this current hour, that there are people that really promotes. They want to promote hate. They want to promote a certain privilege for one group versus we having an equal sense of balance throughout the country. And we shouldn't be at this time in our lives as a country still talking about voting rights.
Yeah.
You know, and people trying to restrict people to have the right to vote. It just doesn't make sense. And how that all came to be, it's for what purpose? You know, what group is going to be served by that? You see, and it's all sense of folks having power and control. And in reference to those that try to fight against that, I don't know if we ever will get to a point where we can have that type of equality that we subscribe in our language.
Yeah.
You know, liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, let's talk about that another week.
Yeah, where we go with that. So it's an interesting initiative that he's doing. Yeah. I am delighted, and I was so thrilled to hear this white male that's in politics at a very high level and as a governor of a state.
And a Republican at that.
And a Republican as that. You don't hear Republicans saying anything about unity and peace.
Who did we just offend out there?
You know, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
That, you know, that he has, we was coming over and I was telling Warren that, you know, it's like there's this term that John Meacham, the historian John Meacham out of Tennessee, always used about better angels. And he picked that up from Abraham Lincoln, who used it actually the day of his inauguration, right before the Civil War, that he would hope that the better angels among us would help to heal us in regard to this war that was going to break out between the South and the North. So Mr. Meacham, he has tagged that in his writings and about better angels among us, that there are more better angels among us than those that would wish that we just be in chaos all the time. So I kind of looked at Governor Cox and said, he might could get a better angel button, because he's stepping out of what we normally would expect for a white male, particularly in a position like he's in, to speak about unity and compassion. But that's his thing. And
I see it from that point. I'm not going to call him an angel quite yet, but we'll see where the initiative goes and what he's really after. I have wondered again on the more questionable or devil's advocate side, is this initiative easier for him to promote because he's already in a power of privilege, that he is already in a place where he doesn't confront people discriminating against him day in and day out.
Right.
So he doesn't have to be bothered quite as much if people say, I don't really believe this, or I'm not with you on this. I mean, what's it going to matter to him? Because he's safe anyway.
Yeah.
So again, that's a maybe a negative way to look at a positive promotion that he is trying to bring about. But it just brought that to question. And, it made me wonder if it would be different hearing someone from the black community say these same words, or would we hear someone from that community use this exact word or phrase? So, I started that discussion a moment ago about if he is suggesting let's agree to disagree, if he is suggesting that here's some problems I have with it. But if he's not suggesting let's agree to disagree, he may just be promoting a better way to dialogue in terms of being more civil, being less violent and angry and vengeful in the way that we talk. And that I totally agree with. I do think we need to come to the table with a better sense of understanding and with better listening ears for to discuss things. But I do think we ought to be challenged. And I do think so. And he may just say, he may be about, let's just listen better to other people. He may be saying, I guess the question I have is if he's not, where does he stand on solving or responding to the ills and to the wrongs that are obviously seen in America? He ends by saying, I love America. And I know those that disagree with me love America too. Well, that's all fine, but there's some days that I don't love America because of some things that are happening in America. So how do we solve and respond the ills and wrongs of today? And within the context of this podcast, the racial injustice that we see, if we only disagree better. So that's where I'd challenge him. But I like some of his concepts. I'll give him that. But I want to move the needle a little bit farther and longer. So that's where I am. But I am glad that we brought this about, because I think some words of compassion and kindness and respect are very healthy.
And America's history is filled with so many incidents where, when you talk about agree or disagree, that could take a long time to unpack, but it needs to at least have a starting point. And I pray and hope that what Governor Cox is seeking to do can have a foundation that can grow over time, because he's put out a statement that, as we said, I was totally shocked and surprised that this white male Republican would be talking about compassion and talking about listening better and being respectful. That's not in their camp. That's not in their camp as far as being able to say it. But I will say this about the white male Republican, that one thing that bothers me a lot is that I think there are more white males like Governor Cox, but they just don't have the comfort. They just don't have the courage. They don't have the fortitude to speak from their hearts. There's this saying that it's 1,000 miles between your head and your heart. And things that come out of your head, you may be speaking from a sense of fear or survival, but your heart, that's where your compassion lives. That's where your sense of being connected to a multitude of people that you can interact and move in, and you don't have to be afraid about your space. Actually, the more you interact with people who don't look like you or don't share your same sense of values, we grow, we learn. We learn from each other by having interactions and being in that space. That's where growth takes place. But if you're just listening to the same news channel every day, you just listen to the same group of people every day, you're not growing. You're not growing. You're just like a robot, and it doesn't promote that sense of growth. So you have to have the spirit that you want to grow, you want to learn. You should wake up every day asking yourself, what can I learn today? That I don't know. Because basically, you just walk around because your culture, the culture that you grew up in, sometimes can subconsciously make you believe and act a certain way. Do you think is your independent behaviors and thoughts? No, it's not. Your culture is sometimes what molds you and shape you to do what you do. When you can step away from that and be more holistic in your acceptance of different cultures and different views, there is so much wonderful things to learn from each other. We just got to be open to that and have a curiosity about life that will make us have the opportunity to learn and grow as we move along.
Yeah, and maybe his initiative would lead people into that. I don't know if he says that. He does have other clips. People can view him, YouTube him.
Right.
Spencer Cox. We found the 2-minute video clip that we wanted to show, but there's many others. There was one 6 minutes. I think I saw one that was 14 minutes. So those are a little bit more in depth.
Right.
May give a little bit more information. I do think he calls us to a good point of maybe he in his own way, he might be asking us about where our life intersects with this idea of discussing things in a more healthy way. Right. Where are we in that process to work toward common solutions? He doesn't necessarily go to the extent of saying, I want to disagree better so that you might change me. And that's where, again, I would go back. And, I'm not calling him a racist at all, but I am saying if someone was at the table with me saying that they did not think that the past of the white-dominated society has had any effect on people of color, I would want to change that person's viewpoint.
Yeah.
Now, violently, I wouldn't.
Right,
so,
right.
Again, I think there's just that balancing point, and that's sort of a precarious place that he's asking us to stand. Where is he just asking us to dialogue and in a deeper, I don't know where to go with that. So I'm just asking some of those deeper questions, especially when it might impact our lives to the extent that I've brought up here. I also wondered what he might think of, Martin Luther King didn't say these words, but Martin Luther King did have the approach of civil disobedience.
Yeah.
So he was all about let us disagree, but let us not be violent. Let's get away from the violence of this, but let us still fight for what is right.
Right.
So, he doesn't mention examples that he's talking about from history that would serve his purposes or would go against them. So that's where I'd question, I'd bring in some of our conversation that we've dealt with before. I'd wonder how he would sort of deal with the civil disobedience, the nonviolent approach to racial injustice in the 60s. what he might say about that in terms of the intersection with the disagreement better.
Yeah.
So that's where I am on that.
Yeah.
So I hope we've created some interesting dialogue and some questions.
Right.
out there.
And hopefully, this kind of pick up along the way, and hopefully someone will turn on this discussion we had about Governor Cox's initiative, and they just spread around like a wildfire, and people begin to talk about this initiative that he's created, that's leaning towards being more based on unity and based on compassion and based on a sense of listening better and learning from each other.
Respect.
So that all of those are key words that goes kind of in that whole mixture of harmony and a sense of coming together as brothers and sisters within the community, the beloved community, so that we can sustain ourselves and kind of live up to the creeds that we have in America. We got a lot of creeds that speaks about peace and justice for all, and in united we stand. So we gotta, if we have these and we sing these songs and we take off our hats and we stand up to the flags and all of that, but do we live out those creeds? See, that's the issue. Are we living up to the creeds, or are they just words? And if we're not doing that, then what are we doing? We're just fooling ourselves. We're just fooling ourselves, and got all these statues and slogans and things like that. But we're not following those creeds to make it be real. Then we just a big masquerade, a culture of just masquerading ourselves. Yeah. So we can see where it goes. Yeah, see where it goes with that. I think it's interesting, and I wish him the best of luck, and that it can take off, and hopefully, because again, when he said compassion, that took it to a whole nother level for me.
Sure.
You see, so I think that's good to hear, and hopefully just hold on to that piece and see where we go with it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know where we left things tonight. I don't know, how far we came along in the conversation. Yeah. I do hope that if you listen to this in live, or if you were listen later, that you might find something to at least think about. And I'm glad we brought it to the attention to others in this way, because it is something that someone that we probably disagree with in almost every ideal of politics. I'm not saying, but I probably do. We would disagree with him. We brought him to the table because he might have had something positive to share, some great words to share, and thanks for pointing some of those out. So I hope we left it in a place that it just wasn't a lot of just hearing nothing tonight, but that we left it with a few nuggets to look at and to consider, even some of the devil's advocate points that we brought up. Yeah, and
I close with this in reference to, Warren, to close, I just want to share this point with you that, and I think I shared this with Warren, that sometimes I have these childlike thoughts, or I say, if I was king for a day, one of my rules that I would make for my subjects is that we would do away with political parties. We wouldn't have Democrats, Republicans, independents.
You wouldn't have labels. You mentioned we wouldn't have labels.
Yeah, we have no labels. The only label you would have to be a public servant. And see, I say sometimes that's what we forget. Governor Cox he's a public servant. The president of this country is a public servant. All of those folks in Congress, they are public servants. They're no different than those of us that own boots on the ground in social work and police and doctors and lawyers and all the people, the traffic control, people that do all kinds of work. They are public servants. And that we get these labels, I think, do more harm than good. That you have to subscribe to a certain doctrine. You have to stay within that lane. No, you're an individual. And the only requirement that I would think we should have, if we have to put a label, is that you're an American. That's it. You're an American. You don't have to be. I'm going to do. One of my friends asked me would I help out with election, working at a poll location this year, and I said yes. First time I ever stepped into that arena, so I had to fill out this application today to mail it off to the city. and it asked me on the application, would you like to be affiliated with a political party? And it had the different boxes I could check, independent, progressive, Democrat, Republican, or none. I put none. I'm there to help people vote. I'm not there to support any particular party. You know, that's so. Yeah, I just think that the more we could get away from these labels and stop being so tied up by your label, that you can't be free and just be a person. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for sharing this time with us.
Yes.
Some nuggets you can take away from tonight, I think, are words like compassion, respect. Remember to fight ideas and not people.
Right.
So maybe this conversation will lead you somewhere in the dialogues that you have with your friends and with those that you may not consider your friends, that you might disagree with. And maybe there's some positives in what we've shared tonight.
That's right.
Thanks for joining White Feather Counsel of Men. And if you ever want to communicate to us outside of these sessions, we can always check our Gmail account.
Yes.
Our email account is wfcounselofmen@gmail.com. Thanks for any support you give us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.